And for some reason, like, they took extra long, and then they sent it back on a next day service that was sat in the like delivery depot for a week. And my cameras weren't back in time for the wedding. And I was like absolutely panicking. And I was like, well, I guess like I'll have to shoot on Fuji.
Hey, I'm Dustin.
And I'm Steve. Welcome back to the Wedding Photo Hangover podcast, the finest phototainment in the world. We are an irreverent look at photography. This podcast, like aspirin, will help you recover from your wedding hangover. And today, we're going to help out more than usual, I'd say, because we're actually joined by a third person. Today, we're being joined by Cat Ekkelboom-White. She is an adventure and elopement photographer from Austria, and she's also a Fujifilm X-Photographer. Kat, how are you doing? I
am good, thank you. How are you?
We're doing fantastic today here in Indiana. Not we don't have quite the lovely views that you were showing me before we started recording, but doing as good as we can without those. Little under the weather, both me and Dustin here today, though. This is kind of like a sick person podcast, I feel like.
That's fine. I'm also like just getting over the flu, so I'm with you on that. Sympathy flu.
I just want our listeners to like get this mental image of all of us in like hospital beds, but we're still trucking through, microphones dangling over the hospital bed. Like, we're here for them. Yeah. We want to get this content out to the listeners.
Was that, Dustin?
I was like, I think we're all drinking just water today. Am I right in that?
Yeah. Big glasses of water.
Well, I mean, also for us, it's like 10 in the morning, so it'd be kind of weird if we were drinking beer this morning.
Would it be, though, for us, Steve, like personally?
Yes, it would be.
Okay.
So typically we do like a segment at the beginning where we talk about like what people are drinking and everything. Today, I think it's just water for everybody. Does anyone have tea or coffee?
It's just water for me today. Yeah.
I'll have coffee after this.
I had some ginger root tea earlier. That was very nice.
Ooh.
Yeah, it really helped me when I had the food poisoning a few days ago. So,
yeah, I was going to say you look thinner.
Oh, thanks, Dustin.
Nothing like a good food poisoning diet to really jumpstart 2020.
So, Kat, you live in Austria. What part of Austria do you live in?
I live in the city of Innsbruck, which is right in the middle of the Alps.
Explains the beautiful view.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, your accent and also your website both make me think England. Yes. Specifically because your website said you come from England and moved to Austria. So what caused you to move to Austria from England?
The mountains, pretty much. Mm-hmm. I grew up in like the flattest place in the UK. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s and I kind of came to the Alps on a snowboarding holiday. I was like, well, this is awesome. I went through my like midlife crisis around 25 where I like handed in my notice to my like good job that I had after university. I was like, I'm going to go and do a ski season. And I never went back.
That'll do it.
Yeah, pretty much.
What was your good job that you had after university?
I used to work in arts administration. So I was working for a big theatre doing fundraising for education projects.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which was really, really cool in theory, except like I was the one that was like, I was basically working with a lot of corporate clients to get loads of money from them, but I never really got to be part of the education projects. So like it sounded like a great job. And I used to sneak sometimes into the theatre in the afternoons, like just go on an extended like break and just watch the shows, which was fun. But yeah, a lot of the time it was a desk job. So I kind of, coming from like an artistic background, I had a music degree and like I just kind of, I didn't feel like I was getting to do anything artistic. So yeah, quit it and moved to the Alps.
Nice.
Just a bit of a change of direction, but you know, it seemed to work out.
Steve gets those feelings all the time.
Yeah.
So you had a music degree. What sort of musical instruments did you play, or did you sing, or?
I was a flute player and I was a composer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you still compose or play the flute?
Nope.
No.
haven't touched either of them for years. Kind of miss it, but I obviously don't miss it that much because I haven't done it since. Although, don't really have the time these days. But I found my creative outlets in other ways, so that's kind of worked out fine.
And you find photography fulfilling, just like you found music earlier in life?
Yeah, definitely. And I think in a lot of ways, I actually find it a lot less stressful.
Yeah.
Like certainly with music, I used to get like massive performance anxiety.
Oh no.
Which was one of the reasons why I kind of, even though I like powered through it until I was like 21, like all the way through university, like towards the end of that, I was just like, why would I put myself through this as a career when it's such a cutthroat business anyway? And like, I mean, I still get like terrified when I'm like shooting weddings and elopements and things, but at least like I'm not the only, like I'm kind of terrified that I'm going to fuck it up. But I know that the bride and groom are kind of also nervous that they've got to kind of show their good side too. So it's kind of like, hey, we're all terrified, so this is fine. Let's just roll with it.
Right.
Like,
there's 3 of us here, and each one of us could fuck this up.
Yeah, exactly.
So if one of us does fuck it up, let's just not be too mad.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, I'm just going to keep taking photos that at least there'll be a few keepers in there.
I love it.
Sounds like this past weekend we were shooting a wedding, and we recently made the switch to Sony. It's kind of like Fuji, but not. And I don't know why I feel this like need to tell brides or like, hey, just so you know, we aren't terrible photographers. We just don't know how to use these cameras yet. And I don't say it like that, but I'm like, just so you know, we did switch cameras. So if we look like we don't know what we're doing, the buttons are just in different places, and it's taking us like a half a second longer to just, that muscle memory is just not quite there yet. And the look on the bride's mom's face when we said that, Corinne, we got in the car after like the salon, like them getting ready, and she's like, I think the bride's mom thinks we don't know what we're doing now. And I'm like, I meant it to be like a lighthearted, like, oh, hey, if we look like we're struggling, we're not kind of thing. And she's like, I think she thinks we don't know what we're doing. And I'm like, oh shit, I need to like really prove ourselves now. And I'm like, or do I just play up that we don't know what we're doing? So,
and then they'll just be super like pleased with the result.
Yeah, they'll be like,
oh my God, actually these are really good.
Yeah. For someone who just got that camera yesterday, like they did okay.
So, Kat, you said that you switched over from Canon to Fujifilm about a year ago.
Yeah.
Did you have a learning curve like Dustin where you were showing up at weddings not knowing how to use your cameras?
A little bit. Like the first wedding that I shot with the Fuji was almost unintentional, and I'd bought a Fuji to kind of play around with personally, and I had like a bit of a gap between some weddings, and I'd sent my stuff off to Canon. I don't know if you have the same in the US. In Europe, you have the Canon professional services where you can send stuff off and they do a service and a clean, and I had loads of time. So I sent stuff off to them. And for some reason, like they took extra long, and then they sent it back on a next day service that sat in the like delivery depot for a week. And my cameras weren't back in time for the wedding. And I was like absolutely panicking. And I was like, well, I guess like I'll have to shoot on Fuji. And so I shot with one Fuji body, and I had the Canon 7D Mark II, which was my backup body. And I hadn't sent that to Canon. So I had 2 different bodies, and I was like, well, I know how to use both of these cameras, but they're not ones that I use all the time. And actually that was the worst when I was like, because I always shoot with 2 bodies, or most of the time. And that was weird, kind of picking up the Canon where most stuff was the same on the 7D Mark II as it was on the 5D Mark IV. But then I'd pick up the Fuji and I was like, oh, hang on, no, the focus lever's in a slightly different place, even though they were kind of similar. And that was, because I do stuff like I don't focus recompose, I move my focus points.
Like a professional. Yeah.
I don't know, some people would disagree with that one, but
I wouldn't be one of those.
But it was just things like that where I was just like, oh, it just took me longer to like try and find the back, like without trying to look at the camera to go, right, where's the button? Just trying to like feel for it. And then you start pressing the wrong button. You're going, oh God, like, yeah. So it was a little bit, so the first kind of where I was on both, one of each body, that was weird. But when I just decided to do 100% Fuji, just got a second Fuji body, it was actually pretty easy. Like the Fuji's, because you're not having to search around in like menus and stuff, which I found was a little bit with Sony more. I found everything with Fuji was pretty much on a button where you needed it or a dial. And it was really, really quick. The main difference I had with switching from as a DSLR to mirrorless was getting used to the different way of focusing. The fact that a lot of the mirrorless cameras, I'm not techie, so I don't know exactly, but I believe a lot of the way mirrorless focus is on contrast, autofocus. And so occasionally I'd get like back focusing if it was a really contrasty background and stuff. So trying to learn to work around that was a little bit of a learning curve. But yeah, I think now I'm pretty much just used to it. And if somebody gives me a DSLR now, I'm just like, well, this thing's so complicated. Or a Sony, to be honest. Even the Sony baffles me. I don't know any of the buttons, what they do.
Neither did we.
Yeah.
Well, and Sony has like all the different like buttons you can like program and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I have shot for Dustin a few times on Sony stuff, and then I've shot for other people on Sony stuff, and it's like every person has their buttons configured differently. So it's like you can't even take your knowledge from like one Sony camera to another when you're like shooting for different people, because it could be a different setup every single time.
Oh, that's
or
fun.
if you let
Fantastic.
somebody borrow one of your Sony cameras and then they change your buttons.
That's yeah,
A good friend of the show, Luke McBride, borrowed one of my cameras and he changed the settings, which was fine because he shoots a video with them.
Yeah.
And so he has one of the buttons where it switches to manual focus. And I was shooting the processional as they came into the ceremony, and I accidentally hit that button and the camera switched over to manual focus. And I was like, what did I hit? What's going on? And so I shot the whole processional on manual focus. And then I'm just like in the back of the church just trying to hit buttons to see how the hell to turn it off.
See, yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess in some ways it's great that you can get buttons to do that, but yeah. That was one thing I hated. Like for me, I don't know if any of you have this, touch screen. I have to turn touch screen off because I touch stuff with my nose all the time and end up like changing settings with my nose because I'm looking through the viewfinder instead of the screen. And so I was just like, right, I'm turning this touch screen off. Like, great modern technology, but no.
So which Fuji are you shooting with currently?
My main Fujis are the XT3s.
And then, so all of Fuji's are crop sensor. None of them
are. Yes.
In that line. Got it.
They are. So yeah, I was chatting a little bit about this before you came on. So like I used to be full frame Canon, and like when I switched to Fuji, I was slightly nervous about going down to crop sensor. But because I don't really ever shoot in churches, occasionally like darker rooms getting ready and things. But I mean, yeah, okay, if you look on like computer screens and you get really nerdy about comparing it and looking at the noise and stuff, you maybe will notice a difference with a full frame. But to be honest, the Fujis handle it pretty darn well in low light. So it didn't bother me. And the images are still really great that come out of them.
Yeah, I've seen some amazing stuff. Heck, I've been shooting more in the last month with my Sony A6500, which is Sony's like crop sensor camera, than I ever thought I would be, just because of the small form factor. Yeah,
and I think like, these days, like I think for us as photographers, it's very easy to get kind of caught up on like pixel peeping and stuff, especially when we're editing, because that's part of what we do when we edit. We zoom in, we look at the details and stuff sometimes. But our clients are never going to do that. Like half the time you're lucky if they look at anything bigger than a laptop screen or their iPhone.
Right.
And I've gone and printed out like up to A3 size prints from, pictures from my Fuji cameras, and the detail and the quality of them is still amazing. So, I realized that it's good enough. I think that's the thing. Like sometimes it's like, oh, but it could be better. Yeah, it could. I mean, I just borrowed from Fuji their 100 megapixel GFX medium format thing. And I mean, that was incredible, that camera. The details are amazing, but for what most people would use it for, including myself, I just don't need it.
Right.
I mean, it's, if they want to give me one, awesome. I don't think they will. But, it's just one of those things. It's really just asking yourself, do I really need it, or is what I've got good enough to do the job?
Well, and I like to remind people, like, people were paying us the same amount of money roughly back when we were shooting with the 12 megapixel camera as they are now when we're shooting with the 32 megapixel camera. So it's sort of, they liked the photos then, they like the photos now, like sort of a wash.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only thing I find it's a little easier when I'm stretching that to a full spread in my wedding albums.
Yep.
Do you do a lot of wedding albums?
Not really. Occasionally, but like a lot of my clients are not from anywhere close to where I am. So it's it can be a bit of a nightmare trying to do like album design and shipping it to them. But I switched my gallery last year to PicTime. And now they have the option. So depending on where my clients are in the world, I set their galleries up with one of the print labs that's in their country, so that they don't end up paying like insane shipping costs.
Yeah.
And I get a few album sales coming through, but to be honest, I don't really push them. But for me, I kind of always I made my pricing model based on digitals only. And if I got print sales, then that was a bonus, but I kind of haven't really factored it into my pricing model. So I don't need to make extra sales because I kind of hate that part of it.
I feel you on that.
Yeah.
Trying to sell prints is always, it's not something I do.
Yeah. No, me neither. And it's like a lot of my clients are just like, oh, we maybe want like one big one to print on the wall. But I mean, I do think photo albums are really important, but I also know that like from my own wedding pictures, we've got an album, but it's in a drawer. Like, okay,
a really nice
if we're
drawer.
gonna, oh yeah, definitely.
A keepsake drawer.
If we are going to look at our pictures from our wedding, then we will get the album, not like the pictures on the computer, because it is nicer looking through a book. But still, like, how often do we actually ever look at our wedding pictures? Like, well, the ones that we've got like framed, those ones we do. We have no choice. They're just there every day when we walk past them.
Reminding you of your blissful happiness.
Absolutely. Yeah, reminding my husband of the biggest mistake he ever made.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
No, he's fine.
Copy.
He's got a good sense of humor. He's all right. He's a glut for punishment, so it's all good.
So how long have you and your husband been married then?
5 years.
5 years. Were you already shooting, like doing photography when the two of you got married, or was this back when you were still working your good job or your high paying job, I think?
It was in between. So no, I had never picked up a camera before we got married. My first introduction to wedding photography was our own wedding and looking for my own wedding photographer. No, before that, so when I met my husband, we were both ski instructors.
Oh, cool.
So that's how we met. And then he's from the Netherlands, so he's also not Austrian. But he was coming to Innsbruck after the winter season to study his master's. And so I kind of just tagged along basically after the winter season. I was like, I'm going to stay. So I did like a few years where I would ski instruct in the winter, and then in the summer I'd be a tour rep. And then not wanting to do like seasonal work anymore, I then switched to working in a hotel. And that's pretty much what I did up until I started photography. And then for the first kind of 2 years into my photography business, I did part-time working in a hotel as a receptionist, and the rest was building up my business. So my business is 4 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's really impressive. Your work's really, really good. It doesn't look like somebody who's been shooting for just 4 years. You made a lot of strides in a very short amount of time.
She probably doesn't have like a lot of bad habits that a lot of old veteran photographers have to unlearn.
I have no idea. I've probably got loads of bad habits. I've just, I've just kind of learned to do stuff my way.
That's best habit.
Yeah. And I kind of always, use the excuse as well that I usually have pretty nice backdrops to work with that kind of maybe distract from like the technical side of stuff. But I'm not a very technical photographer anyway. Like I understand exposure and all of these things. But, I think that's also a big change with moving from DSLR to mirrorless is that with the EVF, you kind of just look at your settings and you look at the screen and go, well, actually, like that's pretty good. Like that'll do.
Yeah, that's been the biggest change up for us from moving to mirrorless is that factor is like, wait, what I see is what I'm going to get.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty good. It's also great. That was always the thing that I hated most was, moving from, if you've got something fast moving on a wedding day where you're going from indoors to outdoors or you've got like clouds coming in and out, like when you had the DSLR, just kind of hoping that you were changing your exposure quick enough with the changes, and now with the mirrorless, you can already go, oh, it's starting to go a bit darker. Let me just like shift stuff around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It almost makes it too easy. Like I feel like I'm cheating.
I don't know. I mean, I do sometimes think now like Uncle Bob's sometimes at weddings have bigger cameras than I do. But I kind of like that because I'm just like, well, you've got all the big gear, but I reckon my pictures are probably still going to turn out better than yours.
Right. Yeah.
It's a kind of a smugness of like, I don't need the biggest camera. Because I've had that before sometimes where you turn up to a wedding and you have got like an Uncle Bob with a 70 to 200. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, you're coming to a wedding as a guest with a 70 to 200.
Yeah.
Or he's going to do some serious bird watching while he's there.
It sounds like an Uncle Bob who maybe is a professional photographer as well.
Or likes to think so. Yeah.
We've had that a few times. We also, I had a wedding this last year where one of the uncles was a producer from Hollywood, and just every little thing during family portraits, he's like, "Are you sure you want to do it like this? Are you sure you don't want to do this with where the light is right now?" And I'm like, "No, I'm absolutely certain this is how I want to do it." It's like, the sun is setting and I have 40 people here I'm trying to put into position for the shot. We're not moving to a new location.
Oh man, yeah. I've had a couple like that actually where, like someone will mention, I've only had a couple where they've had photographers, but who've been in the movie business or kind of like something within like the creative arts, and then you're kind of just constantly like, or for me anyway, I'm constantly thinking, are they judging me for all the choices I'm making right now?
100%.
Like,
do you get a lot of like photographers who are doing elopements and adventure like type weddings?
I've had a couple of photographers, or I do often get, or not necessarily just photographers, but people who are in this, fairly creative. Mm-hmm. Like the one that I just had that actually made me really nervous. She was like a photographer, but also like she did a lot of like visual and graphic design. And she was telling me like during their elopement that she studied like director of photography for films at university. Mm-hmm. And so like, and they chose to elope in Norway where the sun was not going to rise. Wow. And I was like, okay, so you're a photographer, so these are going to be grainy as fuck, like, because I am shooting at the lowest ISO, probably about 3200, like that's the lowest I'm going to go today. And I was kind of really nervous about that, but they loved it, and they were like, it's all about the experience, it's fine, like we love the grainy look. And I was like, good, because they're going to be grainy. But like that kind of, that makes me really nervous when you've got other photographers, because like, you kind of think that you just like, well, I'm going to shoot it the way I shoot it, but I'm then constantly second guessing myself the whole time. Like, oh, would they have done it differently? But then I realized no, actually, because they hired me because they wanted me to do it my way. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. But yeah, working with other photographers is always weird. Like it's a great honor, I think. Like, I don't know if you guys have the same thing, like, because, you know, as another photographer, it's like, well, they've chosen you, so they must like what you do. But then constantly you're kind of thinking like, but they've probably got their own way of doing stuff, their own way of seeing stuff. And if I'm interpreting their day differently, but I've never had any problems, actually. They've often been like some of the funnest ones to work with, and actually the most low maintenance.
Yes. I get super nervous whenever Jen and my wife and I work with like a photographer, and they always end up being our best clients, like just the nicest people. I also get super nervous. You mentioned graphic designers. I get nervous with them too, just because I feel like they see things in a much different way than I do as a photographer. And like they're looking more at, I would say, like lines and like the way things connect and stuff like that. And I'm looking more for like where the light's the best and stuff like that. And so every once in a while with like a graphic designer, I'll get something like, oh, why don't we shoot here? And it's like, because if we shoot there, like no one will be able to see you.
Do you know, it's so funny. I get this all the time as well. So my husband is an architect. And occasionally I've had a couple of clients who've been in like that kind of area as well. And it's the same with those, like, not my clients as much, but my husband, sometimes he'll like look over my shoulder while I'm editing, and he's like, oh, your hips were slightly at an angle there, because if you look at the angle of the building, I'm just like, the couple is in the middle of the archway, what's the problem? And he's like, yeah, but if you look at this side of the building and that side of the building, and like, I'm just like, oh my God. Like, seriously, I'm not sure anyone else would notice this, but then because he points it out, then it makes me just like super like, thank God for Lightroom and the lines you can draw on now that's straight and stuff.
Oh,
I use those quite a lot.
Yeah, the straightening tools in Lightroom are incredible.
So would you say your husband is a benefit to your business or a detriment to your business?
A bit of both. A bit of both. He definitely sees things that I probably wouldn't have noticed. So in that way, I guess, you know, he makes me, you know, the delivered photos at the end are usually possibly better than they would have been. However, I'm not sure anyone would have noticed had I have not made those corrections. But yeah. You know.
So have you found yourself shooting more architecture because of your husband?
I did a little bit, and I think I kind of see more shapes in things now than I used to. Also, like within like natural environments, I'm definitely more aware of shapes, even like in the shapes of mountains and silhouettes in trees and things. So I look for shapes a lot in my framing, which I think is something that I kind of picked up on from, I think, also just looking at architecture a lot.
Yeah.
Right. Because as I've got loads of photography and travel books, he's got a ton of architecture books.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you ever find yourself looking through his architectural books for any sort of inspiration or anything, or?
No, but it's interesting, like you were saying, when you with like working with graphic designers and stuff, sometimes like we'll look through things and we'll see a picture we both like, and it's always, for me, it's the lighting that always makes something like, even if it's a really amazing building, if it's shot in awful light, I'm just like, but then you can see like something that's could be even as an architectural kind of thing, quite underwhelming, but it's lit, like the light's just hitting it really nicely, and then you're just like, oh, that's really nice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you're teaching him to appreciate lighting?
Yeah, I mean, I think he appreciates it pretty well anyway. Like, he's just got kind of, he's got a good eye for stuff. I think that's kind of sucks sometimes, because like I feel like I've trained myself more to see stuff, and he just looks at stuff and he's like, well, that's really nice framing and nice lighting. And I was like, screw you. Yeah.
Screw you and your natural gifts. Ugh.
Yeah.
So earlier you mentioned doing an elopement in Norway. How do you market yourself to do elopements in, like, because you live in Austria, so
yeah.
I don't know. In my mind, I'm kind of like, I assume most of the elopements that you do would be in the Alps in Austria and like the surrounding areas. But how do you market yourself to do like the elopements in other places, like far away, like Norway?
Yeah, so most of the stuff I do is within the Alps. But yeah, occasionally, like I have, I don't know, maybe like 20% of the stuff I do is further afield. And the marketing kind of comes like a couple of ways. So like for me personally, if I kind of say, okay, I'd really like to go to this location. So Norway was one of them for last year. I kind of create like a plan of how I want to target that location. Mainly I do it via SEO. So I'll create like a couple of blog post resources or pages on my website that are kind of information guides on how to elope in Norway. And, then also share some of the stuff on Instagram. I'll use like location hashtags, within it. Even if it's not shot in Norway, I'll put, hashtag Norway elopement or Norway photographer.
Hashtag could have been Norway.
Yeah, exactly.
Hashtag dreaming of Norway.
Yeah, exactly. To like those ones. And then often it's kind of people then come through, either they found like the blog post that I've written, and they've kind of looked and seen like that. And I'm totally upfront. If I've not been there, I won't tell people I have. So they'll kind of either find the guides and then send me like an email kind of, and then we get on the phone and we chat about it. But a lot of them also like come through where I get couples who they may be just kind of toying with the idea of eloping and thinking about Europe and want to go somewhere kind of a bit adventurous and outdoorsy, and like they'll find my Instagram, and quite a few of them they've come through and contacted me because they've kind of followed the Instagram and they've liked kind of the stuff that I'm saying, like the message behind my Instagram, a lot of it. So kind of, this is kind of what I believe in, and this is why I love doing elopements, and this is why I think elopements are really awesome. And a lot of people connect with me that way. And I've had a few clients over the last kind of year where they've come to me originally without kind of a fixed location. And then we've kind of chatted through what they want. And I've kind of gone, maybe this is a good place to go. So like I had one couple last year who originally thought about Switzerland, and we looked at the kind of logistics of the location. They wanted to do like a multi-day hike. And logistically it would have been quite difficult without having like mountain guides and things. So I was like, maybe let's look at these locations. And in the end, they picked one of those, and the Norway one was a bit like that. They were like, we really want to go to Norway because we want to see the Northern Lights, but we really don't have any kind of idea above that. And I was like, well, this is a place that I've been looking into that looks really awesome. And so they were like, oh yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's go there. So it's often kind of quite an organic thing. Also, so when I travel to places, a lot of the places I want to shoot, it's often places I've traveled to like personally, like the Faroe Islands, and kind of just fallen in love with them, and then decided I want to go back and shoot an elopement there. So then I'll just, use my own travel photos and just blog about how awesome it is and how everyone should, go there and elope. And then
people
people
probably take over the Faroe Islands and be like the exclusive photographer for that area.
Yeah, there's not too many people. I'm going to be back there again this year. But that's one where I try not to shout about it too much because I'm also worried about it becoming the next Iceland, because
I've heard a lot of people comparing it to be the next Iceland already. Yeah. And we have like one of our friends who also does podcasts. He like lives in the Faroes part-time of the year, and he's been complaining a lot about there being a lot more like landscape photographers coming through and doing workshops and stuff than there used to be in the past. And it's really getting dark there, isn't it?
Oh yeah, no, sorry, I just went into the kitchen to get some more water as well.
I was like, man, the sun just went down.
Oh, but it is pretty dark now. I have all the lights on now, so it is. The sun has gone. Yeah, it's gone behind the mountains, so it gets dark pretty quickly.
Dustin, was there anything else you wanted to ask before we answer some questions from Facebook?
Absolutely, I did. I noticed on your website you kind of have like different levels of branding as far as like your different avenues of what you do. And I guess I want to know kind of like what drove you to, I guess, separate things, and was it purely because you found yourself doing like more commercial work or more other things, and so you felt this need to sort of separate church and state with like your wedding photography and like everything else you've got going on? Or I guess I think we have a lot of listeners out there that might find themselves in that similar position.
Yeah. So it's more actually like, so the commercial photography site that I have, that is kind of quite old now in that I don't really use it. But when I first started, even though I knew that I really wanted to do weddings as my main kind of stream of income, I had so many people saying to me, oh, you can't, you shouldn't just do one form of photography, you should do everything. And so I kind of was like, oh, well, okay, but I don't really want to. So I kind of created the commercial website as a kind of, well, I really want to do the weddings, but like occasionally I was doing like architecture stuff for my husband's company or like personal branding things. And so I knew that I wanted to keep them separate for the wedding stuff. And yeah, so I kind of put that on a second website, and then kind of just still had on that commercial website a link back to my main wedding website, which then really is my main website and the only one with kind of in photography ways like that I use now. But then I did start off, so I also run a wedding blog, and I started an education website as well last year. So there's quite a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering like how you keep it all straight, keep it all together.
Yeah, it's usually the main focus goes into the wedding photography one, and the other stuff kind of gets updated as and when. But this year, 2020 is my year for outsourcing. So this year is going to be looking at what stuff I can pass on to other people so that I can really kind of focus on the stuff that I want to be building more.
No, that's awesome. What is the stuff that you think you want to invest in more? You don't have to share if you don't feel comfortable, but
no, I mean, for me, like I'm super happy with where my wedding business is at the moment, and I kind of want to stick with that. So for me, it's 25 elopements is the maximum that I want to do each year, and then a few like smaller shoots. And that is kind of the main kind of meat of my business. But I would like to sort of this coming year start doing more education stuff. So last year I started mentoring, and I really enjoyed it. Last year I also ran my first workshop, which was a multi-day one here in Austria.
How did that go?
It was awesome. Like really, really loved it. And so like I would like to start kind of doing more of those things. But then it means like to actually either have the time to really kind of do that, because with the mentoring that I was doing, it's not just the time you're talking to the person on the phone, it's all the preparation beforehand to make sure that like you've prepared for the session as well so that it's beneficial for them. And so it's like, well, what can I do so that I can keep doing that stuff to a high standard? What can I get rid of? And so this year is going to be definitely a lot more about systemizing, and outsourcing, like getting a VA and kind of getting help with a lot of the back end stuff. Because I already outsourced my editing, but there's definitely a need to outsource a lot more this year.
Oh, cool. All right. We're going to do some Q&A now. Let's do some Q&A.
But Steve.
Dustin, do you want to pick something?
Lanny from a random Facebook group asked the following. I just got a contact to do a Yeti hunt wedding. I'm not talking a Yeti themed wedding. I'm talking a hike up into the mountains and try to kill a Yeti wedding. The couple are asking for a full refund if they don't actually shoot a Yeti during the course of the wedding hunt. What do I do?
I don't know.
We felt like this was Swiss Alps related.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Like,
or in your case, Austria Alps.
Dress someone to hire someone to dress up as a Yeti and send them out to be the bait.
To be murdered.
Send them out to be shot.
Oh no, I mean you can switch it for paintball gun or something, or put blanks in it so they think that they've shot them.
So you're creating a package to pull off the greatest con.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Hunting the most dangerous animal. A person or a Yeti, we don't know. I love
Yetis
this
even
idea.
exist?
That's where I think this is going. I think this is
Wow.
going. These people just don't want to pay for their adventure elopement, so they're like, yeah. We're hunting the Yeti. If we don't get the Yeti, we don't pay for the photos, right? And they're like, this is how we get our photos for free, and the most absurd, ridiculous way possible. But I mean, if you want to run around the mountains holding guns, like, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems extremely violent.
Do they allow guns in Austria?
See, when I hear stories like this where people like want sort of a clause that allows them to get a refund in their contract, like, it always makes me want to like put the most ridiculous counter clauses in. Like, okay, fine, I'll do that, but if you die while we're on the mountain, like, I get all of your estate, all of your money. Like, let's take this a step further. Like, I also get your firstborn. Like,
if you have a mountaineering accident and you fall off a cliff, I get everything.
I get everything.
Also, in the contract, I'm behind you always, every time when we're climbing up a mountain.
Yes, I'm also the one in charge of all of the firearms.
So I feel like we helped out Lonnie. How do you pronounce that? Lanny. Lonnie. Rhoda from a random Facebook group writes in and says, I was shooting an engagement at a ski lodge and my camera stopped working on me. It was like -5 degrees at the time. I asked around and people said the battery probably got too cold. The wedding will be next year at the same time and same place. What do I do if it's that cold again?
Yeah, so this is one I deal with all the time. You need a ton of spare batteries, and you have to keep them in jackets, in pockets close to your body, so that even the spare batteries are keeping warm. And actually, a tip for if you are doing a wedding somewhere really, really cold, if you shoot with 2 cameras, have one with you outside and leave the second one inside, because if anyone's ever shot a wedding outside in the freezing cold and then followed the couple inside, the first thing your camera's going to do is steam up. Mm-hmm. So having that second camera inside at room temperature means that one's going to be good to go. So yeah, I mean, if you're someone that usually shoots with primes, maybe shoot outside with a zoom lens and have a second camera inside with a prime on ready to go, so that you don't have to worry about that too. But yeah, batteries, they will die quickly in the cold. That's also one of the joys of mirrorless. They're going to die even faster. So literally, like, yeah, the elopement I had in Norway, I had about 10 batteries like shoved in all of my pockets, keeping them warm, just because I knew that I would get through batteries quite quickly.
Interesting. Yeah, we did an elopement last January, and it was frigid, and we had the same. We had one camera that kind of stopped working on us because it got so cold.
Yeah.
And I haven't run into any issues this winter with the Sonys, but yeah, we had
next winter you'll run into even less issues. Every winter we go through from here on out, you'll have less and less issues with cameras dying because it's too cold. I mean,
because it won't be cold.
Yeah, we're heading for the heat death. So
maybe, yeah, we're all going to die in a fiery hell pit.
Which is why you chose to live on a snowy mountain.
Well, yeah. Well, I hope it's going to be a snowy mountain pretty soon.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
So Sammy from a random Facebook group says, curious, what are your thoughts on putting swear words in your Instagram bio? I'm not talking full word, but say SH asterisk T or F asterisk CK, etc. Is it tacky? Is it silly? Or is it good for attracting the right clients? An example given, documenting the SH asterisk T out of your wedding.
I would definitely do it. If it's you, if that's how you talk, and if that's kind of how your clients are, then yeah, why not? I mean, I don't have expletives, I think, in my Instagram bio. I possibly occasionally swear in my captions, but I kind of think that's probably a good way to ease your clients in, because if you're the sort of person that swears all the time, If everything's squeaky clean on your Instagram bio and then you turn up at their wedding, you're like, oh, fuck yeah, this is awesome. Then they might be just like, oh, this was a mistake. So yeah, I mean, like, why not just be your true self?
I think the only thing that would be tacky or silly would be censoring the words, like how they wrote it, like SH and then like an asterisk and then a T. Like if you're gonna do it, just say shit, you know? Don't like censor the shit.
Don't know.
Don't censor it.
It depends which word it is, I guess. I mean, like, I kind of, I get it. Like, I think it's kind of cutesy. Like, it's a bit cheeky if you censor it, if you have SH star T kind of thing. It's almost like you're saying it, you're swearing, but you're kind of being a bit winky at the same time. Like, you know.
Interesting. It's also keeping it clean for the kids, you know.
Exactly. Family friendly.
That's right. So you could take it a step further, though, and you could just put, you know, you could do asterisk the whole word out. And
let them fill in the blanks.
Yeah, exactly. You're letting your client choose that maybe they just meant to put darn it. So go either way with that one.
Yeah.
Mackenzie from a random Facebook group asks, curious, what is the etiquette when shooting photos alongside another videographer? Does the videographer take lead? Does the photographer take lead? Who is in charge of posing the couple? How does the positioning for the first kiss go, or anything else you can think of?
This is always a fun one. I don't shoot alongside videographers that often. I think the thing is with elopements, they want it to be simple and intimate. So then to have like a photographer and a videographer, like you end up suddenly being more wedding like vendors than than people getting married. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, certainly for me, whenever I do work with videographers, I always make sure I speak to them before the wedding. Like if I can't chat with them, like I always drop them an email before and just kind of say like, you know, hey, how do you work? Like what stuff do you shoot on? Like, do you shoot wide? Do you shoot like you stand really far back, but like on a massive zoom lens kind of like, and you just kind of saying to each other, you know, like, okay, this is where I like to shoot certain things from. And how does that work with how you work? Because at the end of the day, you're both being paid to do the job. Like the couple hasn't said, oh, you know, you're more important than the other one. Like, actually, I've had that once where the couple said to me, our photography is more important. The video thing's just a bonus. I think the parents paid for the video. But, you know, generally, like, for me, I'm always kind of trying to think, okay, well, don't be an asshole. Like, I need to get my shots, but I know that the videographers also, they need to get theirs. Usually we end up kind of doing some weird dance where like I crouch down low and they like rest their camera like above my head kind of thing, so that we've both got the same angle because I'm pretty short, so it works usually. But I think, yeah, it's just, you just have those conversations. I
like that you're just a human tripod for them though.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I know my place in life. But I mean, yeah, it's also like when it comes to directing the couple, like I would always kind of say, you know, I'll get the couple to do what I want them to do. And then if you want to come in afterwards and, you know, get them to do something else, feel free. The worst is actually when they don't. Like I'll be directing the couple and the videographers just kind of shoot the whole time. And I'm like, okay, do you want them to do anything now? And they're just like, no, that's good. And I feel like it makes me feel guilty because I think I've taken up all of the time. When usually I'm sure it's just the videographers going, no, it's fine. We've got enough stuff, but it makes me feel like I'm the real bossy one. But yeah, I mean, it's always that thing. If you need to get what you need, but also just making sure that, yeah, you're not being the asshole and letting them get what they need to. And it's just about having conversations.
Do you ever shoot video as well as shooting photos or no?
No, only photos. I've heard too many other photographers who try to do both complain that they've missed certain moments because they decided to switch to video for something. Yeah. And then the couple's like, oh, do you have a photo of that? And they're like, well, I could do a screen grab, but no, I was doing video for that point. So I'm just like, I don't want to have those conversations with people. Yeah. So I'll just stick to the one thing I know how to do and do that properly.
I love that.
So when you said earlier that you call the videographer and like go over a game plan, do you ever have a videographer that said, don't worry, Kat, like we bring 3 videographers with us. So don't worry, tight, wide, we got it all covered.
Yeah. I've had occasionally where they're like, oh, don't worry, we work with multiple cameras, so we'll have like 3 tripods set up, and I'm just like, okay, well, I mean, at one point I may stand in front of one of them, but then I also then don't worry because I'm just like, well, I mean, I've got 2 other angles if I'm blocking one of them, so that's fine. Right. But yeah, I mean, with elopements, yeah, you don't tend to get that too much because it's such a small affair that if the couple's booked a videographer, they probably would know if they were going to have 3 of them turning up. Usually it's just one. It's one of me and one of them, occasionally 2.
Yeah. Do you ever bring a second person? Like ever?
I occasionally bring my husband. Mainly like if it's like a multi-day hiking trip and he can get off work, or if it's to a really cool destination where we've not been before or somewhere we like going, like the Faroe Islands, then he tends to come along too, and we make it a holiday, and he gets given a camera and he can make all the straight line architecture pictures where all the lines lead in the right directions, and I'll take the artistic shots.
He's like, I will take your 14 millimeter, please.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, so occasionally like I make my husband do a few shots just to kind of make him pay for his airfare. But otherwise I shoot alone almost all of the time, and I like it that way. Yeah, I'm a loner.
You mentioned earlier kind of like talking your couples through where they're going to get married. Do you help out a lot with the planning, and like do you find like an officiant or a celebrant or anything like that for them as well, or?
Yes and no. So I do, like, the way stuff is here, certainly in Austria, I can't legally book anything for them. I can kind of give them names. I can give them recommendations. Same with like location suggestions. So I will kind of suggest locations that I think will be really nice for their ceremonies or for their photos based on what they've told me they want the day to look like. So I do kind of have quite a lot of creative input in a lot of the locations that we go to. And yeah, I will suggest to people like vendors that I've worked with before in the same areas. But it's pretty much like, here's some names of people, here's a list of locations that we could go to. Like, now this is up to you to decide what you want to do, kind of thing.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that's probably going to do it for us this week on the Wedding Photo Hangover. Kat, where can people find you online? My homepage for my wedding photography is wildconnectionsphotography.com. And the education site, which is slowly getting built up, is adventureweddingacademy.com. And then Instagram, Wild Connections Photo or Adventure Wedding Academy. And the same for Facebook as well. Not that I update Facebook very often, as I don't think anyone does these days. Does anyone?
No.
It's Facebook.
Yeah, I waste a lot of time in Facebook groups, but I don't actually post very much on like Facebook these days. So.
Hey, it's all right. Facebook owns Instagram.
Yeah, it's fine. They're still getting our money somehow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Wedding Photo Hangover, Kat. It's been awesome talking to you about this stuff. Dustin and I don't do a lot of elopement type photography because there's not really any places people want to elope to around us. So it's always a joy when we can talk to somebody with experience in something we're not very familiar with. So thank you so much for providing that for us and for our listeners.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Kat. Is there anything you want to tell our listeners? You have the mic. This is your opportunity.
Oh God, that's a lot of pressure.
That's what we're here for.
Maybe just recommend something you watched or read recently. Doesn't have to be a lot of pressure.
That's pretty boring. Like, I don't read very much at the moment. I am reading just like business books. My New Year's morning routine is to start by reading for half an hour every morning. Wow. But actually it's a really awesome way to start the day. So I guess that's a good tip. And I'm currently reading the E-Myth, which is pretty good.
What's that one about? I've seen it, but I've not actually picked it up.
Yeah. So the E-Myth is a book about why most small businesses fail. Sounds joyful. Yeah. But it is actually like, it's basically saying that like we have kind of different personalities, and most people who start a business, they're focused on like the doing part of the main job of their business, but forget that they also need to be a manager, but they also need to be like an entrepreneur, and that they need to like forward plan. And so it's how to not fall into the pitfalls of why most small businesses fail by kind of only focusing on like the doing part of your job and not the other sides of it too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I'm only just kind of about a quarter of the way through, so still got a lot to learn. But It's a pretty good book. So yeah, recommend that. But definitely like starting your day before you check emails or look at your phone, just like half an hour of reading is a really nice way to kind of start and get kind of motivated for the day, I find.
Bye, Dustin. Bye, Cat.
Bye.
To another episode of the Wedding Photo Hangover podcast. If you love the show, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you want to connect, we're at Wedding Photo Hangover on Instagram. Dustin is on Instagram at Dustin_McKibben, and Steven is at Steven Van Elk. If you want to join the awesome community of listeners that contribute to the show every week, join the Wedding Hangover Facebook group. If you want to keep this podcast alive, though, head on over to StevenDustinSaveTheWorld.com, and you can sign up to support the podcast for as little as $1 a month. On top of the benefit of knowing you're keeping a good show going, because we got a good show going here. You also get the benefit of extra content like outtakes from episodes and our weekly Steven Dustin Save the World podcast, where we answer more Facebook questions. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time your head is pounding, your limbs feel like dead weight, and your entire being aches for the sweet embrace of death. That's right, next Sunday after you shoot another wedding.
Steve, are you okay? Sound like you had like zero energy.
Yeah, no, I'm energied out. I'm tired, dude. Tired. Been sick all week. You've been sick all week too.
Mine was like bad for like 2 days, and now I'm finally like on the upward or downward slope of recovery. Mucinex combined with Airborne is my regiment.
And that's helping?
Yeah, the Mucinex is helping to thin the mucus, which everyone wanted to know about. And it's helping me be able to breathe, which is helping me be able to sleep.
Overrated.
Which is helping me just have a more functioning life.
All those things are overrated.
But yeah, gotta get skadootin' here soon to go shoot some real estate.
Ooh, fun times. All right, bye. Later, bud. Bye.
Hire someone to dress up as a Yeti and send them out to like be the bait.
To be murdered.
Send them out to be shot. Wedding Photo Hangover was edited this week by Steve Van Elk of Bespoke Tone. Go to Bespoke Tone for all of your photo, video, and audio editing needs. Woo-wee!